Hello guys, welcome to Photoshop. This is a introductory tutorial where we'll learn the basic navigations of Photoshop, the interface, and how to open images. And we'll probably go into the move tool today. So Photoshop, what you have in front of you here is the interface itself. At the top we have the menu bar where you'll find the menu items. Below this you'll find the options bar. On the left hand side is a very important toolbar which could expand, and anytime you see these double arrows means that these things could come out or go in, right, for space. So on the right hand side are your palettes, right, and these are your layer panels, channels and paths. Now the interface itself can change visually. If we go to window and we can look down here and see that there's a black check mark next to these words, and if we were to remove it you'll see that they would disappear. And we can also add on extra panels like brushes, for example, and it will appear here, right? We could even drag these palettes into each other for space, right? So this is basically your setup here. Now if we go to window and our workspace is set on essentials, we could also change to one of these presets that Photoshop has designated to us. So we could change the photography and you'll see that the palettes would change on the right hand side, right? So we could change to any one of these paintings, and as we change to like for digital painting, these palettes would change to help us, but also we could customize it. So for now we'll stay in essentials. In the document window itself I have already opened up this JPEG here. Now to open a file it's pretty simple. You go to file, open, and then you choose whatever image you want to choose or select. So we have Bishop. Let's open mountain landscape, and you can see that there are two document tabs now, right? And this would now bring us to the move tool. Now the move tool is our first tool on the toolbar here, and how it works is that it basically moves any object that we have in our canvas. So right now there's something right background, but it has a padlock on it, and this padlock signifies that the layer is locked, and when a layer is locked nothing can really happen to it. So what we can do here is unlock the layer first, and then we could see whenever you unlock it that pop-up comes up. We could see here that some transform controls appears, right? These little anchor point boxes here. Now sometimes it may not appear for you, and that is because in the options bar the show transform control icon isn't checked. So if we deselect it, it may look like this, unlocked, but you will not be able to see it, but you can still move the image itself, right? So if we move it and we want to undo something that we did, we go to edit, undo, move, control Z. Now in earlier versions of Photoshop there's undo, which is one step, and then there's step backwards, which would undo 3 or 4 times backwards. So my version is Photoshop CC 2020. If you're working in an earlier version, instead of undo, you'll see undo here, but also you'll see step back or step backwards. So show transform control, what it does, it allows us to get these little double arrows, and what it does, it allows us to resize the image proportionally. Earlier versions you'll have to hold shift to scale proportionally, but in 2020 by default it's already locked in proportionally. To get it to scale freely you hold shift in 2020. In the other versions, the earlier versions of Photoshop, you have to hold shift to get it to scale proportionally. So that's just a big difference there between Photoshop 2020 and the earlier versions. So now that we have the how to open an image, we are familiar with our workspace area, right? We can see here how to zoom in and out. Now to zoom in and out is this magnifying glass here, and we can click it and you'll see the little plus arrow within the magnifying glass itself. We could click into the image itself and zoom in, and we could even see the pixels here. Now to zoom out, we could either select it here in the options panel. If you notice that with every tool that we select, the options bar change, menu items. So the options bar is really for the options of the tools that you're using at the moment. So we could click the minus sign here and zoom out, and click positive and zoom in, or, which is very easy, you just hold Alt to alternate. So right now I'm positive. If I hold Alt on the keyboard, it switches to zoom out. Right at the bottom of your document window here, you'll see the percentage zoom that you have. So as we zoom in, we're at 50% here, and zoom out, we're at 33%. So that is how you zoom in and out. Now when we zoom in, sometimes we want to get to that area there that is covered somewhere along there. So to get to that area, you know, naturally you'll want to use these little scroll bar here, but the fastest way is just to hold the space bar, and you'll get this little hand tool coming up, and it's the same hand tool here, and we could just click and drag to navigate around our document like this, right? And switch back, and I can zoom out. And that is how you zoom and pan in Photoshop. So let's go back to the move tool, and with the move tool now, as we said before, we could resize by unlocking the layer, right? If we hold Alt, let me unselect this, let me hold Alt, we could resize from the center point. Now Alt and Shift would do the same thing in the earlier versions of Photoshop, right? So, or Option and Shift on a Mac, right? So shift selecting, or just Alt would give us this proportion change here. Now also, if you notice that if we go up in our menu items, you'll see it is grayed out at the moment, and sometimes this happens when we forget to accept our transformation changes here or reject it. So Photoshop won't allow you to move forward unless you accept the changes, right? So we commit to the transform, or just hit enter on the keyboard, and there we committed to our resize. Now with our transform controls up, we now could rotate, and to rotate the image is pretty simple. We just need to go to one of the corner blocks, and you'll see the double curve arrow up here. Now there's this one, that's the resize, and then there's this one, and that's the one we're looking for to rotate. And once we click and hold, we can rotate with our mouse freely, right? Now I don't want to accept this transformation, so I'm just going to click cancel transformation here, and now what we have here is if we hold shift this time and we rotate in 15-degree increments, right? So if you want to rotate exactly 15 degrees, you hold shift. Okay. To save your work in Photoshop, we could go to File, Save, and we could save to cloud or save to our computer. I usually save to computer. And in here now, we can name it first tutorial, right? And we could save it. Now it's saved as a PSD file. This is a basic Photoshop format, the native Photoshop format, PSD. There's also the PDF, Photoshop PDF, which you could also save in. But saving in Photoshop PSD allows us to save all the layers, and we'll go into layers later on. So this is how we save a file. File save, and now our file is saved on our desktop, right? If we go to file open, you'll see it there. Or if we go to choose the desktop, you can see it here. So that is how you save your file. Now if you want to export your file, you can also export it as a PNG, and again we could save as JPEG or PNG or GIF or PDF, and we'll go into that later on. So that concludes our initial navigation and move button. So I'll see you around.